everyone, so welcome back to Tabletop Assault. This is our episode 2 podcast. I'm your host David. We're joined today by Ross, Stuart, and we have Rob on for his initial podcast. Guys, today we're going to be following on from episode 1 where we were discussing sort of our introductions to the hobby, our favourite armies, just a whole bunch of nice sort of hobby enthusiast stories. And we want to start off by sharing obviously Rob's side of the stories today, and then more importantly as a group we're going to be discussing our thoughts, and it's quite a wide and varied variety of thoughts on the current state of Warhammer 40K. So go around the table, guys, everyone say hello, say welcome to the people who are listening, starting with you, Ross.
Hello, welcome everyone who's listening. Filming this on Halloween. Don't think any of us have dressed up, but because you can't actually see us, you can pretend we did.
Stuart, anything you want to say to the listeners today?
I am currently dressed up and I'm not saying what it is because I'm not allowed.
Yeah, this is a family-friendly podcast.
Nuts.
Cool. Dry roasted, we hope. Anyway, Rob, onto yourself. Anything you want to say to the listeners today?
Yeah, I am the token Englishman out the four of us, so hope you guys enjoy the podcast. It should be informative, but should we have a good laugh at the same time.
I think someone said in the last podcast, Ouija's Assemble. So we will not be doing Ouija's Assemble today because we're joined by our southern counterpart, Rob, so fantastic. Right guys, well we just want to kind of also mention this is also our first time doing it live. Previously we recorded the podcast and then we posted it via YouTube, and again this will also be posted via YouTube. But we did kind of want to just mention there could be a few technical issues throughout today. Bear with us, this is our first time trying this, and anything you guys you spot or anything you want to ask any of the members on the podcast today, put it in the comment section or the chat section to the right of the stream. I'll be monitoring that, trying to pick up any of your questions, and just feel free to ask away, and we'll use the time wisely. But starting off then, so Rob, as you're now in the podcast the first time for you to share a little bit about your hobby story thus so far. Kindly share with us, bud. Pass it over.
Yeah, well, you need to get a brew and a biscuit. May take some time. So it's quite nice that they're doing it this on, as the guys know. I actually turned 40 this weekend.
Wow, you don't need to share that, Rob.
Yeah, I know.
Wow!
That's the point.
What?
But yeah, I started way back when, second and third edition. But how I started off was actually from my dad. Now, God bless his soul, he actually got me interested in Lord of the Rings. Mm-hmm. So he started me off with all the fantasy element and fantasy games, and literally about 30 odd years ago I actually started on Games Workshop board games, so the Space Crusade here, having figurines in your hands and actually playing the games and the missions and everything like that really started for geekism and the fantasy element. But I also had a good close friend of the family from my mum. He actually got me involved in the 40k element, and my very first army back then was actually Space Orcs.
Oh wow!
Now, the plastic Gretchen, the plastic Orcs, Death Skull Looters had just come out. The guys that are listening, if they were really that old, well, as old as me, will remember for Tyranids a thing called Zotes, which are basically like four-legged beasts. With like a top half of another alien with guns and God knows what. And the original Screamer Killer in metal was about quarter of the size of what we have. So that was my very, very first army. Then I went on to stuff like Marines for a bit. Then I actually grew up and actually went to uni. But I really started properly at age 18, 19 on Death Guard. Now I had a complete company of metal Death Guard. which was because you had weapons like plague sword, the decision hit, which was hilarious. And as well, you actually had to roll like a 14, 15, I can't remember the total amount, but you have to roll when you hit, and you roll for armor penetration. It's front armor, side armor, rear armor. You roll your dice, add it together.
Okay guys, sorry for that. That was a slight technical malfunction with the audio there, so apologies from us again. This is our first time doing this live. We're bound to get some issues. So Rob, you were talking a little bit there about obviously the backstory into the hobby. If you'd be kind enough to pick up where you left off. I was so rude to interrupt you.
Yeah, that's alright, mate. Just don't do it again. You're rude, I know. Yeah, so I don't know where we got to, but back in the day, it was.
You're talking about I remember Death Guard, because I'm going to ask you about Death Guard in a minute.
Yeah, Death Guard. Yeah, it was basically in the old rules. It used to be like the 2 HQs, so 2 HQs, 4 troop, etc., etc. But full metal Death Guard, so 7 squads of 7 that I had in 7 rhinos with Typhus when it first came out. And at that time as well, I was actually lucky enough to work for GW for 4 or 5 years in Northampton Gaming Centre when it was a gaming centre, whilst doing a proper job at the same time.
Define a proper job, Rob.
Well, that was Monday to Friday. I used to work there as part-time at weekends, so I worked 7 days a week, but working at GW itself was more of a hobby job rather than an actual job itself.
I love how David sort of just asked Rob, can you define a proper job? Like, we don't know. We're not sure what a proper
help
job
me.
is.
Tell me what I'm doing wrong.
Sorry, I found that really funny.
Yeah, well, yeah, so having a proper job sucks at times, but yeah.
At 40 do we find out what it is, Rob?
Pretty much, yes.
We're enlightened.
Yeah, you got a long way to go, yeah, Ross.
Sorry.
But yeah, so I started on doing Death Guard itself, then a little bit of NIDS. Only very touched on when they started getting really good in 6th and into 7th. I had a bit of a hiatus for a couple of years, but then I actually tournamented, which we'll go into later, with Tau and Farsight Enclave when it was first released.
You're going to upset some people saying that.
What, Farsight Enclave?
Yep.
Well, it's like back in 6th, 7th, 8th, it was when they actually released the book dedicated to Farsight and his 8 and having battle suits as troop choices, so you could actually have a full suit list, and it was when the Riptides just come out as well, so it's like 1,500 points was 14 odd models, so it was great for painters that just wanted a game, but took it to the GT Warhammer World before it had its mass renovation, and it didn't do too bad. Scared the living bejeebus out of people going, how many models, how are you going to win this? And on for qualifiers I won 4 out of 5 games, so I didn't do too bad.
No, I think statistically that's pretty successful, but yeah.
Well, at that time you had to really win all 5 games to get qualified into the final. I only just got into the final itself. Didn't do too bad then, but that's for another time. But then when I moved up to Scotland, I grabbed the AdMech by both horns and not looked back really.
Yeah. So what's would you say AdMech is your new main army, or is AdMech?
Well, at the moment, AdMech are first love for 8th edition, and it worked. I just enjoy using them. I think Ross can agree. It's a very mechanic in relation to your stratagems and how you actually physically use the army itself. It can take a pounding, but at the same time you can dish out a hell of a lot if you do the right combinations. But at the moment I'm reading Cool's great work, novel that's just come out, and it's absolutely brilliant. He's an absolute psychopath, mental Fruit Loop. But he's just, if you get a chance to read the book, guys, get hold of it, get the audio book. You can tell he's part Yorkshire just from from the way he talks. It's great. But as a character, Belisarius Cawl is my favourite at the moment.
He's that guy in the workplace that, you know, you're a bit odd, but your work is outstanding.
Yeah, and he's sort of a few screws loose in the back of his head, sort of thing, and you wonder where all these ideas are coming from, or how he actually works, and the way he actually does it, and how the actual novel portrays him. You could just you can imagine how he actually is. But like I said, there's a lot of armies that I could see myself playing.
Okay. Do go on.
Sorry, mate?
Do go on. I'm intrigued.
Do go on. Well,
I mean, like, to me, my list, when people go, what armies do you think about playing? The answer is all of them. But, you know, there's too much variety.
There is, but at the same time, you've got to think, okay, what style of armies do you want to play? Like I said, you guys, seriously, you have to face the Harlequins, which is a completely different kettle of fish to Mech. And then I've got the Blood Angels, which is a work in progress, and it is going to be work in progress for a while until I get some ideas on how to actually build them up, because I'm still not 100% sure, and if and when the Blood Angels supplement comes out, that may completely change. But I look at Gene Stealer Cult and Cult Ambush. Played a couple of tournaments when they've just been released, and they are tricksy as anything.
Are they more trickier than Eldar, or?
Yes, they are.
I don't believe you. Just lies. It's all lies.
No, they are, to be fair, because like I said, all the hidden counters, and they have the opportunity to put in, when they see a unit coming to go up against, they can tailor that deployment to whatever they're going to come up against itself. Aberrants are fantastic. They're brutal in combat. The vehicles I love just to look at them themselves. But it's also NIDS. I mean, slight spoiler, or if you haven't seen it, but me and David had a game, Angels versus NIDS, and the way NIDS play now is absolutely brilliant.
I don't like it.
It's for those who haven't seen that battle report, it is live on the channel just now, and it's a tricky game.
It is, but I said stealing before the actual game starts there, David, as you normally do.
I think that was the first siege I've done in a few months, by the way, Rob.
Yeah, but it's the first game that me and you've played in.
Okay, that's true.
A while, and you decided to steal straight away. Stealing's wrong, kids. But at the same time, it was a game I tried to hit back, but being Blood Angels and the main combat unit being wiped out by Sneeze doesn't really help things. But I say I love NIDS pieces. I've played against NIDS, played with NIDS a lot. Thousand Suns, they're nice to look at. I've not played them myself, but Thousand Suns to look at as an army is very, very beautiful.
If you don't mind me asking, Rob, because we've got Death Guard, and I mean a lot of Death Guards nearing completion. I think most of them just need to be based now.
They look really good.
So what's your thought on that? I used to play a lot of Death Guards back in the day as well, and then all their new models came out, so I couldn't play them as much. But we've got a whole bunch coming, hopefully on the channel, I hope before the end of the year. What's your thoughts on that? Because I didn't know you played Death Guard back in the day.
Yeah, I played Death Guard quite hard for a good 6-8 months solid, just to get my head around the mechanics back in earlier than that. Yes, Death Guard can be very tricksy to play with and play against. Because they are so expensive as an army, point-wise, you've got to be quite brutal in what you actually take. If you're going competitive sides, you've got to be really, really sure on what you pay for is going to do its job and get its points back. Fluff-wise, you can just go to town. Typhus and Poxwalker Bomb was a big thing last year, competitive-wise and fun-wise. The models are stunning. They really, really are. So they've gone to town on the aesthetics forum. You pick up a Death Guard character, for instance, and you go, I want to take that home, I want to paint it, I want to collect all the characters because they are that good. And Mortarion as a model itself is another stunner.
Do you think he's greater than Magnus? And choose your next words carefully.
Love you, David.
In what term do you mean that, David? Do you mean as in stat-wise, work-wise, and tabletop? We could speak about how the Primarchs fare against each other for days in that one.
So I'll answer your question really quickly.
Whether it's tabletop.
It's
I know you just want to talk about Magnus. That's your life.
It's not just tabletop. It's everything.
Well, so I've got a good love for Mortarion as a Primarch himself. And way he just acts as Death Incarnate. The Primarch model for him now in plastic is, again, like I said, absolute stunner. I've not had a chance to get hold of it and paint it, or create a Death Guard army for myself. But game-wise, Magnus poo-poos all over him with ease. If you go one-on-one, Magnus will rip him a new one very, very easily. I've seen guys take both of them as a tandem, and the first one to be dropped is always Mortarion because if done right, he is so easy to break.
Yeah.
It's a shame because he is an absolute tank, but you have to put so many combos together on him to make him survive, and then as soon as he's within the enemy's deployment zone or very, very close to, that's when he can cause the issues. Magnus can fly around back like the sweet butterfly that he is and hit things with range.
That's a good comparison for him, by the way. I like that.
Yes, very much so. But he can hit things with at range. He can deal things at range, buff things where he needs to buff, and just be an absolute pain in the backside. Mortarion, you can't do that. You have to get him in close with as many units as possibly can, shut things down. If you play Mortarion in that way, you need to understand you will lose him by the end of turn 5.
Yeah, no.
But I've never seen Magnus play.
Everyone's seen Magnus play on the channel. Just go and look at the episodes I'm involved in and you'll get to see Magnus play.
And you'll see my tears as well.
So many tears.
So many tears.
Stand cases, Magnus.
Just to give you my thoughts on Mortarion things, because we've jumped onto this one. I think we've segued into the area. But Death Guards came out as, what was it, were they the 4th Codex? It was Space Marines, Chaos, Grey Knights, then Death Guards?
Do you mean for 8th edition? I thought Death Guard were the 2nd Codex.
Yeah,
I think Chaos Space Marines came out beforehand.
No, it was the 2nd Codex because they released it at the same time. Well, literally, Space Marines and Death Guard to marry up with the new main box set. Because if they just released Chaos Marines, people would kick up a stink and not be able to use the Death Guard as Death Guard properly.
Yeah.
Now, I said the Codex is for Death Guard. I think is
they were 4th.
Yeah, they were 4th. I just checked.
So guys, what I'm going to do, if you don't mind, as the host, I'm going to keep things moving on though. So, first of all, Rob, firstly, thank you for sharing your little hobby story and hobby journey so far. Well, with Death Guard coming to the channel though, as we're talking about Death Guard, I'm sure Ross won't mind allowing you to take his Death Guard out for a wee spin. Because God knows, no offense, Ross, I'm definitely going to be borrowing your Death Guard because Typhus is one of my boys.
You say that, but you just love Primarch. Like, after you got your hands on Magnus, oh boy.
No. I will never play Mortarion because if anything, he's partly to blame for the hatred against Magnus. So
yeah, whenever everyone says, Magnus did nothing wrong, I think we can all agree Mortarion probably did everything wrong, and he doesn't care.
Did everything wrong.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And he doesn't care.
No, he doesn't care. Anyway, we're going way off. Okay, we're going way off. So anyway, guys, right, so we're going to move on. So the main theme for today, though, is actually talking about the current state of Warhammer 40k. Now, this can be quite a divisive topic, if I'm to be honest, guys. Purely because some people are really happy with the current format of Warhammer 40k, and some people are disappointed with the current Warhammer 40k. And we've got a really good mix of views. So just to give the listeners a sort of understanding of the views we have, Rob's very much quite heavy into the tournament scene. So Rob's going to give his thoughts and opinions on the sort of tournament play for Warhammer 40k. And again, guys, this is all opinions, so we're neither right or wrong. Stuart is obviously just joined the channel, and Stuart's now got himself back into the hobby from being a 7th edition player, leaving the hobby to come back in 8th edition. So it's a really good view to see of a beginner sort of level, what a player sort of feels. And I like to think me and Ross are kind of sitting in the middle, just taking chunks out of each other in the armies that we like to play. So we're going to give you a sort of feel of what we kind of, a sort of maybe a general sort of overview of match play, I guess is the way to describe it, not a unique style of play. But what I'd like to do is actually start with Stuart. So Stuart, I want to kind of pass it on to you. And you've just recently joined the channel, as I mentioned. You're new to the hobby, and kind of share your thoughts on seeing 8th edition coming into what do you think works well, what do you think doesn't work well, what would even you like to maybe see changed? And again, feel free to just air your opinions.
I mean, I played a few games now, so
you're an expert straight away, yeah.
Yes, you always ask me. I'm the quintessential tabletop gamer now. That's me. Totally. I think it's just more. I think it's a lot simpler. It's a lot easier to get into this one because, Christ, what was it, 7th edition, 6th edition? Like when you're looking at everything, like even tanks, like you had so many arguments of like, oh, is this the correct angle to hit like the bonus points for the rear armor?
Yep.
Is 25% of the armor up here so you can get cover? There was like so many variables to those rules that everyone could argue and you could bicker for like an hour just on one turn. Whereas now it's very much cut and dry. Like, can you see them all though? Right, you can shoot it and that's your distance and you just roll, and it's like straightforward rules now. It's just the number of dice you get. That's really it. It's not like all these different insane variables that you'll get.
Okay, but I think you've kind of hit on the nerve there. The 7th edition being more maybe convoluted and complex, and 8th edition kind of simplifying it. Is that what you're saying?
I'd say that 8th edition isn't simplified. It is simplified rule-wise. Like the
starting portion of it is simplified.
Yeah. When you show
and then they add to it.
When you showed me the rules of it, I went, "Oh, that seems pretty cool." And they went, "And here's the Codex, Stuart." I was like, "Oh, this is where it gets a bit complicated."
Yeah, but
I 100% agree with that.
But also, if you think about it, is like especially for us veterans, as it is, using multiple different types of armies, is getting your head round all the special rules linked in with the basic rules for each individual army itself. I said that the lucky ones out there that concentrate on one army and do the one army really, really well, they can concentrate on the special rules and how to use it to its max potential.
Mm-hmm.
But as we all know, plastic crack gets involved and you want to buy more and more and more, and your armies grow tenfold. But then when you with 8th, it is a very, very good base to work on, and then it's okay, how do you want to play? Well, you need to use this army, or this army, have a look at those, and then use special rules for those armies itself moving forward.
Yep.
So
Stuart,
I agree with you, Rob, on that. I would just say quickly that the fact that it's easy to begin with the rules side themselves, but then the codexes do make them complicated because they've added so much strategy.
It's not necessarily complicated. It's giving the person playing the opportunity to take those basic rules, but make them fluffy to what they want to do. Like for me and Ross with Mech, making it more mechanical, bionics, the type of weaponry, for Vanguards with -1 toughness because they use radiation weapons. It's those sort of it's fluff, but fluff with rules, and it's taking those rules and adding them onto the basic rules that you have to be wary of.
I mean, the table's a lot simpler for 8th edition. Like, what is it? Like, your hit your armor penetration and your wounds. That's it. Like, pretty kind of get through all that.
Yeah, I mean, 6th and 7th is okay. You have your
Short.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, so you take your basic skill. Is it short range? Is it long range? You add 1, -1. Are you in cover? You add 1 or -1. I've got this contraction that gives me +1 to hit, and it's taking 5 minutes or so. Slight exaggeration. 5 minutes or so to get what you need to roll to hit, and then go. Okay, I've got strength 4, toughness 4. Right, that's the force to wound, or strength 4, toughness 5, so on and so forth. So going from 7th to 8th edition on the base rules, what you need to learn is cut out a load of sort of, sounds harsh, but the wasted time on the gameplay that you don't need to deal with. If you've got 2s to hit, 4s to wound, done.
Okay. So guys, I'm going to just pause for a second. Rob, you're going to get a chance to do your opinions. Don't you worry about it.
Oh yeah.
So I think we do need to move on though, because Stuart, I've got a really important question for you. Just a really important question.
I reject it.
That's great. that's great. So I'm going to log off, guys. See you later. No, more importantly, so Stuart, obviously, because you're coming into it at the moment, is there anything from 7th edition when you were playing 7th edition you would maybe want to see reintroduced, or are you quite happy that we've kind of just completely moved on from that?
It has been a while since I played 7th edition. I don't know. Like, I'm pretty good with what 8th edition's really brought to it. No, I don't really think there's that. I bet you there'll be something that everyone will be like, I wish this was back in it. But at the moment, from what I've been playing, I'm pretty fine with 8th edition as it is at the moment.
Okay. I think there's a good topic that in a few months' time, once you're getting more into 8th edition, Stuart, we can revisit your feelings on 8th edition. You know, how you finding the rules now that you're more involved in it, and having experience in fighting different armies as well. Okay. Guys, I'm going to just, before we move on to another person, we've got a question that I'd like to put out probably to Ross, if you'd be so kind.
Hey,
it's a 30-minute segment.
So Andrew Van Ass has asked, any thoughts on 9th edition rumours? And I'd like to pose that to you, Ross.
Right, yeah, okay, very important one, because I think I put on Discord, when they showed the mini rulebook, I think I put on Discord, plug, join Discord, is that I was like, yes, they're bringing out a new rulebook that's going to hopefully update the FAQs and make it generally easier for new people. And then they didn't, and there was a lot of kerfuffle about that. We'll move on from that. I think that even if it's a 9th edition, if you want to call that, it's not a matter of 9th edition, everything, they need to clean up the rules. And I'm not talking for even, sort of the veteran players, but even the new people, if they won't go, here's Dark Imperium, which takes, the very standard way people sometimes start is that a box set with the rulebook and 2 forces, and it is now unbelievably outdated that, whether you want to call it 9th edition, it's the rulebook needs to change to a degree of, maybe it's not even 9th edition, it's just updating the rules with their FAQs, and you can christen that 9th edition, I don't know. But it needs to happen. And there's a whole bunch of rumours on it now circulating, and very, very fresh ones, but, there's been rumours of 9th edition ever since 8th edition really dropped, they just when's the next one? Especially when the Codex is finished, there needs to be a change in the book. Whether it's for the veterans just to get a solid book who can refer to, or even for the beginners, I think it's essential, it needs to happen. Will we see it? Well, by this summer that's coming, it'll be 3 years old, 8th edition, and I think it's about time, even if it's just a clean up of the rules and 2 new forces, which I'm not going to speculate on what they could be. I bet it would be Space Marines of some sort, but it needs to happen. I think I think it needs to happen.
What's the difference? Is it 3 to 5 years? Then the rules get changed, isn't it? That's when the next edition really comes out.
Sometimes it's been longer, sometimes it's been shorter. I think
it's whenever GW need to prop up their balance books.
2 years.
Sorry, I had to put it out there.
What was that, Dave?
It's whenever GW need to prop up their balance books.
Oh wow, yeah. Well,
there's
a few ways they do that, but no. I just think it's a clean-up for everyone. Now they've got FAQs online and everything, they need to, and a lot of people probably want to go to a digital format rulebook, which I think is partly the future as well. There's also people to begin with. The rulebook, if people are buying a printed one, it needs to be updated. It is far too old now.
Okay. Ross, we'll take that as your answer. So, Andrew Von Ass, I hope that kind of helps with your question there. And guys, keep posting your questions in the chat. We will get to it throughout the live stream. Andrew Von Ass is just to answer your question there, Ross. You said you won't speculate on the box set. Apparently, it's rumored to be Marines versus Necrons.
I heard that too, but I don't want to.
What?
You know, yeah, I heard. We're going to hear a lot of rumors of things, but so far I as well, and it's we'll see. I wouldn't mind that, but we'll, you know.
Yeah, we'll see. Okay, guys. So we'll keep moving on. So Stuart, first of all, thank you for sharing your thoughts there. And again, I think with you being so new to the hobby, I think it'd be really good for us to revisit, obviously, your thoughts on 8th edition as you kind of progress through the hobby.
I'm the neutral guy from Futurama, the neutral world.
It's a great quotation. That's good. Right. So moving on. So Rob, let's pass it on to yourself. Obviously, with you kind of doing the more tournament side and the more sort of competitive side, what's your kind of feelings on that sort of scene as we've moved into 8th edition?
It has changed a hell of a lot. Lately, we've had, I've seen tournaments, especially with the Iron Hands being dropped. So as a prime example, one GT up here happened a couple of weeks ago. Out, I think about 32 players. I think 12 took Iron Hands.
Wow, that's quite high.
Yeah, and that was before the FAQ dropped. Main reason was because of a few stratagems that made him absolutely filth. I think there's one of them. It's 1 CP before you actually the game starts, and you can change a dreadnought to a character. So people taking 5 dreadnoughts, there's 5 characters, stick them at the back, and oh look, you've got a dreadnought with double las cannon and missile launcher that you can't actually target. And that's what people were doing. There was like 1 or 2 basic builds that were just absolutely horrific, and whatever you took, you couldn't break it unless you were really, really lucky. And that was big sad face on my part, because I do like taking fluffy lists. Yes, people say you don't take fluffy lists. Your lists are quite brutal, blah blah blah. But I try and put some kind of theme to my list itself. So I go to tournaments with a list that I like to use. It's not meta orientated. I like to play against meta lists, which I said has been Iron Hands at the moment as well. Imperial Fists are coming to the forefront on their new rules. Which are absolutely evil.
Disgusting.
Yeah, but it's also like the Salamanders with all the Flamer fun. So it's nice that Marines are getting some love, because they were so far down the pecking order for people playing at tournaments that if you were just going there for fun, sorry to say, but they would take Marines as a fun list.
Rob, do you think that's because... Do you think Marines are getting love because of 8th edition? Or do you think Marines were just always sort of out of the mix tournament-wise?
7th edition, Marines were thereabouts, sort of mid-range. They didn't really win big tournaments or even local tournaments, because they were very samey, and there weren't any like severe punch unless you take like a special character and you pay points for special character, and there's not really much brutality in Marines. I say when you take Eldar, Dark Eldar, for instance, Tau back in 7th, Tau were very, very powerful in 7th because of how they actually worked with weaponry, speed, and brutality in that respect. But in 8th, I think they were very lackluster from the very get-go. They were all singing, all dancing, and they were GW's pride and joy, Primaris Marines, new style of Marines. There you go, guys, have fun. It was a great idea, but tournament-wise, it just didn't. They were nice, but not brutality nice. What you have to be in tournaments.
So Rob,
Can I
Yep.
Yeah, because that's an interesting one. It's something I've always thought on this one. When it comes to the first couple of codexes, which were Space Marine, Chaos, Grey Knights, Death Guard, and Admech, and then you sort of got Astra Militarum, I think, and then Eldar. Those first 5 codex, especially Space Marines, Chaos, and maybe Grey Knights and Death Guard, were clearly written before 8th edition really came out.
Very true.
And I feel that's where the weakness were. They didn't quite know how to gauge things. They had rule testers, but the real rule testers are the players.
Yeah.
You know, and they took everything that they saw from the last one, you know, all the other codexes, and put it into Space Marines, and they made a much more stronger utility one. And,
I mean, with the Marines, as always, they are very much a Swiss Army knife. You can tailor them however you want to. With the detachment wise, you can create yourself to have as many command points as you want, but it's how you physically use them. So start off with, nobody really knew how command points could affect the game in such a way, and me, as a prime example, I was only taking 6 or 7 command points, thinking that'd be plenty, and it was nowhere near enough. But the likes of Eldari now, where you can have all 3 Eldar races all in one, the alliances have made a big impact in 8th and tournament wise. Imperial Soup List, which I'm not a big fan of. I'm a purist at heart, which is a stickler for me, because I say I've come top 10, top 15 on a lot of tournaments. I've come very close. I've won 4 games out of 5 on regular on regular tournaments itself. But with Admech as they are, when they were just released the Codex, they were good, but not tournament winning good. I mean, they're still not as it is, because you look at the tournaments, especially over in America at the moment. It's a different tournament system over there than it is in the UK and Europe, but and it's different rule sets.
Sorry for any American listeners in just now, but you're doing it wrong.
Yeah, apologise. I didn't say that. We love you long time.
No, I'll just say it for you. It's fine.
Yeah. So the tournament scene in America, game-wise, is very, very different to UK and Europe on how they set up the rules. So the way that they play the games is very different. So you can have a look at how their tournaments are set up, on who's winning their tournaments. Then you look at how the UK and Europe, the top 3 or 4 races in there, and you'll see a big difference. And it's a lot of time, sadly for me, it's soup lists. Again, like I say, it's Admech themselves. I feel with Admech, you're middle ground, and if you're really, really good with Admech, you could sort of fall into the top couple of races if you're really, really good. I've seen guys in America taking 18 Dakabots.
Of course they are. Of course they are.
So Rob, can I ask you a question just on a point you made there? You said it's very soup lists, but we've seen in the Space Marine Codex now that they've tried to mitigate that by with the Angels of Death and then the supplements. Do you think if they rolled that out into other forces, it could change the meta to, you know, rewarding uniformity rather than soup?
I think
it's worked quite well. It stopped Space Marines going like having the Loyal 32. Do you think that would work by rewarding more rules to people who don't use soup?
It would change everything on its head. Soup lists are there for particular reasons. So you have Death Watch, Imperial Guard, and Knights. That was a big thing for a while, because you're going to have Death Watch, with Storm Shield, Storm Bolters for the sheer amount of Daka. You've got Imperial Guard for Mortar Fest. Then you've got your heavy duty tanks like Lima Russes. Then you've got your Knights in there as your shooting platform, and that used to be non-stop. Then you've got like Custodes, Blood Angels, and Imperial Guard. So you're using Imperial Guard as your infield to get your command point buff up, because you can get them so cheap. Then you have your your Marines as your scouts for infiltrating in and stopping your opponent deep striking closer to you and causing an immediate threat. Then you have your Custodes or whoever that you want to ally in for Imperium as your big stick. And with Custodians, it used to be all shield captains on bikes, so they're all characters. So if you're stuck in behind a unit of scouts, you'll have to kill the scouts before you get to the captains. But that's some of the ways that they were actually playing it. But you'd use the low-cost armies to boost up your command points for then everybody else to use. It would be interesting if they created a rule for if you're going to go soupless, that whatever race you take, whatever command points that race generates, you can only use those command points for that race. So, for instance, if you've got a battalion for Imperial Guard can only use those 5 command points. If you've got a Vanguard for Death Watch can only use that 1 command point, or use the pool of 3 that you get for being backforged. So I think there needs to be some management in relation to how many command points you get reiterate that, Rob, is how many command points that each races get to use in a game.
Mm-hmm. Agree.
Which will then go, okay, I don't want to bring Astra Militarum for my battalion because I've got all foot troops. My command points for those is not going to be wasted. So it's just trying to bring some uniformity into what you actually create to actually physically use on the field.
So Rob, we need to wrap up this point soon.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. I think because we need to be careful. We don't want to divulge into other topics which we've got planned as a later date. But I think there's a really important question though you need to kind of finish up on is 7th edition, or even not 7th edition, because I've seen some people in the comments have mentioned lower editions all the way down to 3rd and 5th. Those editions up to now, was tournament play a lot more balanced as it used to be, or as 8th edition came along at the right time and really put tournament play to a place of where it needs to be? There's a balance there, there's a mechanic there, and then you can actually draw new players into tournament play, because I know a lot of players are against it. Or was it better beforehand and 8th editions maybe escalated it too far?
With earlier editions, it's we used to play 1,500 point games, 5 of them in a weekend, and you had to get your head around all the mechanics, what you were doing. And with 7th itself is, like I said, you have to work out roll to hit, all your pluses and minuses, so on and so forth, long range, short range. There's a lot more, it sounds stupid, but there's a lot more rules to take in your head for the tournament play at that time, and you only have about 2.5 hours per game to get all 5 turns in. Yes, the missions back in 7th were a lot easier and more straightforward, but at the same time, it was the actual physical game itself was a lot more difficult. 7th I loved. It was fantastic. Tournament playing 7th was a good crack, and it did exactly what it said on the tin. 8th edition, with the rules made simpler, it's brought a hell of a lot more people into tournament play, even friendly tournament play. And I'd say to guys who haven't been to a tournament, get to your local club, get to a local tournament as long as you're confident with your army, what you're playing, and try it out, because you meet so many new players, make so many good friends and that lot. And the gameplay now is fast and furious because the rule sets are that much simpler.
I just remembered something. I know what rule I wanted to put in the 8th edition.
Go ahead, Stuart. Share it with the crowd.
And I know the rule I want out of the 8th edition, and Ross knows this. That stupid rule where I can't shoot your HQ choice because the troop choices are in front of them.
Okay, so on that note, we're just gonna leave it there.
I just had a brain fart and remembered that there.
So
For
Stuart,
context on that, and for context, Stuart and me had a practice game, and I had an HQ clearly out in the open, but like staring straight down the barrel. But I did have on the sides 2 units that were closer, and Stuart was like, he is standing in the open, they're both in cover, can barely be seen. You tell me I have to shoot them? Yes.
That is a stupid rule, an utterly stupid rule.
deal with
Calm
it, guys.
down, calm
You're playing with models, all right? Deal with it. You're playing with toys.
I don't care. If it's
right.
tournament, I'd be really annoyed about that.
So, Rob, thank you for sharing your thoughts on that. Much appreciated. Again, out of all of us, you're definitely the more experienced when it comes to tournaments, so we kindly appreciate that. We're going to pause, just quickly go for another question that's came in. We've actually had a few questions that came in, but more importantly, we don't want to leave people hanging. We want to give you answers. So we have a question that came in from... If I can find it.
I demand answers.
I demand answers.
How dare you?
Yeah, I'm trying to find
Well,
it.
let's look for that comment.
Got it. So,
I'll go.
VideoBuster0815. So you asked, what do you guys think on the current power creep and the obvious imbalances between codices and their effect on the game? So I'd like to volunteer myself for that one straight away, because I'm clearly not the expert on power creep, although I use Magnus almost every opportunity I possibly can. So to answer the question, power creep, I think there's a clear power creep, and again, this is completely opinionated, so I'm not right nor wrong, but I would say there's a clear power creep, and it just stems from rewriting each codex as they go along the order they're going in. You tend to see as each new codex comes out, that codex gets a whole bunch of nice buffs and nice abilities, which leaves the previous codex slightly behind it. There's a few exceptions to that rule, but that seems to be the sort of common trait and trend. I know me and Ross have spoken about this. You look at the first edition codexes for 8th, so you're looking at your Mech, you're looking at your Grey Knights. They've fallen so far behind some of the modern codexes, Space Marines 2.0, even Chaos Space Marines 2.0 to a degree. And the power creep is pretty evident. The issue is, we did ask, if you all remember in 7th edition, guys, as players, we asked quite prophetically, we wanted continuous updates and as consistent codex as possibly could. The downside to that is you're going to get a codex on codex every single month with new rules, new updates. You can't really ever stop the power creep. It's just going to be part and parcel of the hobby as a whole. The indexes when they all... Sorry, Stuart?
Sorry, it was Scutaria, because bringing it up, because I was saying, was it 7th edition or was it 6th edition when Scutaria, remember when the Scutaria were brought in, that their actual army was brought into the
Yeah,
fold?
it was 7th Scutarian Cult Mechanicus.
Yeah.
Actually took.
They were so broken, like they were
There
unbelievable.
was the Warclave, which you had a knight and shed, I think it was one unit from virtually everything on there, and yep, it was the go-to list for any admit player. It was great.
I remember it was their plasma rifles, the cavalry, the plasma rifle that basically, oh yeah, 3 shots. And what?
Okay. But to keep on the question though, guys, the effects that the power creeping codexes have on the game, in my opinion, is you're never going to get rid of it. As soon as a new codex comes out, which we've asked for as regular updates as possible, as soon as a new codex lands, it's unfortunately going to have a certain element of power creep associated with it. And there's nothing really we can do to stop that. It's just, you need to just live with it, I guess, is the easiest way to describe that.
I want to promote the new codex as well, so everybody will want the new more
Of course.
powered up the right away.
Of course, it's a hobby, but it's also a business. So they want to release a new codex and want people to buy new stuff. That I don't disagree with. That's just how it is. But the only way they would ever fix that power creep is to kind of do what they did at the start of 8th edition, which is you don't have codexes, you just have an index, and everything's in that one book. But again, you're going to lose a bit of fluff, you're going to lose a bit of flavour. And I don't think everyone wants all their armies buckled in with all the other armies in one book. You want your book for your army. So yeah, I would say that's the only way you're going to solve that. But the power creep exists, and as far as I can tell, it's going to exist for the future to come.
Even if they tried at the beginning of 8th edition, they went, right, that's the rule book, these are all the codexes released now, and they will never change in their balance. They would essentially not make a lot of money off of it. They basically, right, that's it, you wait another 5 years for the next codexes and the rule book to come out next editions.
Yeah, and I would say that also kind of ties into talking about playtesters. That's kind of... I think that's also kind of the same thing. When it comes to playtesters and they are looking at the broken codexes, yeah, the question that was asked is, what do you guys think about broken codexes? And in the IH happened, the community was aware of the obvious problems in a matter of days. The community is always going to be aware of these problems, but again, you're never going to solve it as long as codexes exist, because they have to be updated every single month. So to answer that second question, again, the same problem exists. The only way you're going to solve it is not have codexes. That will kind of maybe soften the power creep a little bit. Anyway, we don't want to digress into that. We have some important topics to discuss. So,
well, just say now very, very quickly, there's another way as well, just to jump on. You had Sisters of Battle Beta, which came out obviously in Chapter Approved, and as we're moving towards Sister Battle coming out, they've obviously got feedback on the Sister of Battle Beta, which hopefully will influence quite a good codex. Maybe. I think they've maybe left it a little bit long in time. And then they had beta rules such as Bolter Discipline. So you are seeing this sort of... They do link out rules and sort of give us an idea of it. I think that's a good addition. You know, giving the community a bit of, here are different rules to try. But then there's obviously big rules like Iron Hands. It just went nuts. You know, the supplements themselves were a huge shift, and no one could predict sort of that one. But the sort of linking out rules, I think, has been quite healthy for the game itself. Bolter Discipline certainly helping Space Marines in general.
but then, okay, I don't want to go into the point too much longer, but again,
No.
you are right about Bolter Discipline, but then it also had a major downside to other armies. There are armies that didn't take full advantage of it, like, for example, Deathwatch didn't really get in Custos. Yeah, you're totally right. So when you're right, they're giving it into the community to have a look at it. But I'm not gonna lie, a lot of the community out there who play Warhammer, you have to remember, you're out there for your own armies and factions that you support and enjoy. So when you're playtesting, you might not necessarily consider those other factions that are getting a massive downside to these rules that you're actually potentially encouraging to bring into the hobby.
Oh, I'm fine with that. As long as Black Terror get their codex, I'll be fine with that power creep.
Your supplements come in, don't you worry about it.
I will be fine with the power creep. I will embrace it.
So, moving on, guys. Next up is really myself and Ross's opinions, and we're kind of just covering the sort of generalistic view of the current state of Warhammer 40k. So you've always had Stuart with the stepping into 8th edition. Rob's kindly shared about the tournament and competitive side. So Ross, I'd like to start with you. What about your opinions on the current state of Warhammer 40k? I mean, again, me and you have been around a lot of editions, not tournament-wise, but what's your thoughts?
So, oh wow, this is going to go on, guys. So, to bluntly say my opinion, I am not as much of a fan of 8th edition as I was of 7th edition. Brutally put. Now, there's aspects of it I do like, obviously, and I think they've done real great strides in. But there's the general aspects of the game, and this is one I find. The difference is that in 8th edition, I find some games can be done turn 1. And I don't like that. And sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. I don't know the tournament play as much, but sometimes people give up turn 1. In 7th edition...
It has happened a lot.
Yeah. Well, in 7th edition, I found games... How to put it this way, is that things in 8th edition is more about how quickly you can drop your opponent, and sometimes that becomes the principal factor. Drop them as quick as you can. 7th edition, sometimes it was a lot more difficult. Grey Knights, and they did get a bit ridiculous in 7th edition. I remember Zinch were demons, or maybe Grey Knights, or maybe both, had ability to get a 2-up invul that's rerollable, which was nuts and not practical. And I think now in 8th edition they've completely got rid of any way of getting a 2-up invul. It's almost unheard of, which is very, very good in my mind. But the idea of games going on longer has become a little bit more difficult in 8th edition, and I don't like that pace. That's something I haven't enjoyed as much. What I have enjoyed, and this is predominantly coming as a Dark Eldar player, is that they are updating the codexes regularly, because Dark Eldar in the past, my goodness, I think they only had 2-3 updates in like 20 years, give or take.
If you're lucky, that is.
If you're lucky, I think one of them was just a revision codex, which I'm totally against revision codexes. I think they're not the right way to do stuff. It's kind of nice to get all the new stuff in one book, but depending on the time, it can be a bit difficult. So, there's many. What I'd say is that it's enjoyable, and the things of updates regularly. I like. If you only play one army, I think that's kind of good. If I played just Dark Eldar, it'd be fantastic. Many people do play many different forces, and it can be very overwhelming. The main thing I loved about 8th edition is because it's current tense, is that you do get a lot more variety and customization to your forces. I loved how they added legions or dynasties or whatever you want to call them. Fantastic. But I think they're, and Painfulness, is this going to go back to the person talking about 9th edition rules? I was impressed by, and I've not played it yet, Apocalypse. The sheer fact that everything, and I haven't played it so I could be wrong on this one, is that turn sequences almost go at the same time. So I think one person moves all their models and then another person moves all theirs. And then you do the firing sequence almost at the same time, with models only getting removed at the end of the phase. So there's this sort of, every model in turn 1 should, in theory, be able to do something. And I think that's sorely lacking at the moment, where whoever gets turn 1 can eliminate big things and then they just have no effect. Well, Apocalypse did take on this aspect of models can go, every model will go, and then at the end of the whole turn work out if they've been damaged. Also, things like if you're planning to drop Magnus, you may need to pile in a lot more shots than you think, because you don't know if you will slay them. And I really like this aspect, and I'd be very intrigued to hear what, if anyone who's watching has played Apocalypse or played these rules in general of 8th. Does it work better, that one? Do you see that every model does get a go? And I mean, sometimes you'll oversaturate and kill something. But I really like that aspect that the damage is worked out at the end, and that just about every model gets to do something turn 1. And I might be wrong, I've not played the Apocalypse rules yet, but I thought that was very solid. Equally, Apocalypse rules and Kill Team got command points right. They need to readdress command points from the very base. It favours a few armies far more than it favours a few more. So that needs to be addressed. Like Custodes, it's very impractical to get 8 command points, very easy for things like Astra Militarum, and very cost effective. It's all these wee things that they are becoming more evident in the sort of game that need a bit of a redress. And I think it's impractical to say that the change in sort of the way we're going to shoot and everything to be more like Apocalypse, that would change the game far too significantly. It would be very crazy. All codexes would almost be made null and void, but certainly they could think about the command points, and maybe if they want to address it, they could do it in chapter approved as a beta, and maybe that would be very interesting. Few people might disagree with me on all these points, but
I think you raise a decent point though. There's no harm in adopting certain positive aspects of other games in the hobby. I think you're totally right. I think stratagems, you're right, need to be done from the base up. And
I never even knew about Apocalypse anyway, most of those rules. That's kind of nuts.
That's why you're new to the hobby, Stuart.
Yeah, no, just that whole rule of like, if I pumped like 20 wounds into you and you've lost 20 wounds and your Titan like explodes. From what I'm gathering, what you're saying is it doesn't explode. It basically goes, oh no, I get still shoot, and then I'll explode at the end of the phase.
No, not quite. It's even more interesting than that, Stuart. Is that you can cause 20 wounds on the knight, but then you do the saving throws, I think, at the end of the turn. So even if you put 20 wounds and it only has, let's say, 18 wounds.
Yeah.
I don't know. You go, I've put in 2 extra wounds. It could still save a whole bunch of those and be alive, but you can't do anything about it because the shooting and combat phases are over.
Oh, right.
So,
okay.
you do all the saves at the end, you work out the damage at the end, and you'd go, right, well, Magnus has 20 wounds. He could save a lot more. I'm going to have to put 40 wounds into him just to be safe.
All right.
And it's that sort of, you may have to oversaturate on a target, which means other things get to stay alive.
Yeah.
Rather than, in the current edition, you go, right, Baneblade, kill it. Right, kill that Baneblade, kill the Lehman Russes. But you don't know. You don't know if you'll do it. Which I kind of like that aspect. I think that's... And then those Lehman Russes will still shoot back, which is good, which is, I think, I could be wrong on that one, but I think that's very good.
So Ross, just to also kind of recap a little bit. So you've told us a few positives as well there about both sides, previous editions and current 8th edition. What's your overall standing, if you don't mind me asking? Where do you feel, do you prefer 8th edition to the previous editions, or do you still find yourself, you know, swaying towards those older style of games?
I'm still swaying towards the older style of games, only because 8th edition, in my mind, is a little bit too brutal, and it's, if a game can be decided on who gets first turn, which could be in 7th as well, don't get me wrong, it's not ideal to me. It's not ideal. I would prefer games go on a few more turns and everything just to see, but there's been a few games in me where we've done turn 1 and we're like, wow, this is kind of decided, and that's not a good feeling. And the only way I think that can be addressed painfully is a complete rewrite of the rules.
Okay, so that's quite a strong way to kind of view 8th edition as a complete rewrite. That's quite a powerful view.
Yeah, and oh boy, that might get me into trouble.
Okay, Ross, if you don't mind, we're gonna pass it on if that's all right.
Yeah, no problem.
But I appreciate that, and I think that's all valid points there. Again, this is all opinions, so no one's right, no one's wrong, everyone's valued.
The internet is always right.
So definitely not Stuart. So I think, you know, I'd like to give my last thoughts, and I think I'm a little bit different than probably all three of you in your opinions. And to give a bit of context, I was heavily against 8th edition from the moment of its inception. I was a stalwart 7th edition player, mainly because I liked doing Abaddon and 10 Zinj Terminators, and as soon as I realised that was a potential no longer going to work the way it used to, didn't like it. And also I loved giving Kaldor Drago to a pinball save.
You're the guy I was speaking about.
Yeah, I was that guy. You faced that many a times. So when I was getting told I was getting those things taken away, I was heavily against 8th edition coming in, but that's my bias. I will say, as the game has actually gone on, I've learnt to adapt and actually enjoy the game. And a couple of key points that the game is by no means perfect, but a couple of key points that I want to start off by saying that I enjoy about the game is it's introduced a feeling of a weight to the game that was never there before. And what I mean by that is dice. So in 7th edition, you would never really roll, you wouldn't even actually need as much dice as you do now. And I like the feeling of taking tons of Orc Boys or tons of Gene Stealers and rolling 100+ dice. There's something satisfying about that, and it gives a certain gravitas, because we're playing with toys, let's be honest, on a board. None of it's realistic, but rolling that many dice gives me a sort of feeling and representation of this is actually a lot of dice, this is a lot of attacks, and I enjoy that feeling, I enjoy that aspect. And I've also got a sense that that's maybe something GW were going for when they incepted 8th edition. They wanted people to be rolling more dice. Now that also has its drawbacks, in my opinion, because the way the current rules work for wounding things, etc., unfortunately an easy way to kill any model or any unit is weight of dice. And this game has unlocked the ability to throw as much dice as you possibly want to do. So it has its drawbacks. Another element, and Ross kind of touched on it, and I just want to resonate to it, is adding a bit of flavour to the game. Adding in the legions was a great aspect, and adding in things like sub-legions and all these other craft worlds and all the crazy rules you now get. Because what do we love the most? We get attached to our armies, and I guess these new rules allow us to get attached to them even more. Ways that we're never able to in previous editions. Like, for example, I know the first inceptions of Necrons were very bland. There wasn't much of a characterization to it. I think some of us have discussed this. When they added the characters into Necrons in previous editions, people didn't like it, but I adopted it, and now they've added legions to it. I love it even more. So these are things 8th edition has brought. They've tried to bring that storytelling back into the game for the average player, and I quite enjoy that. However, I'll probably kind of summarise my points with a major negative and a major positive. The major negative I have for 8th edition, in my opinion, is, again, I'm going to just repeat what Ross has said, is the turn 1 sort of wins and losses in 8th edition. It's far more prevalent than my experience in Warhammer going all the way back to 4th and 3rd edition can remember. It's much easier to get that turn 1 annihilation of your opponent than it ever has been. And it's sad to say, because you're kind of losing the sort of spirit of the hobby a little bit. Yeah, you maybe not going to win every game, but you want to at least have this sort of back and forth. And I'm going to put my hands up. I'm as guilty as anyone for abusing that system, because I play Magnus. So if you play Magnus, you're instantly guilty of it. It's just a fact. But it's true. It's absolutely true. And that's the biggest downfall I feel for the game. That can just be over in a heartbeat, and players can get disheartened or disillusioned with the game, where they won't enjoy it. And GW needs to address that. They tried to address it by giving the bolster defenses stratagem. Yeah, doesn't do it. There's too much that ignores cover in the current editions and current meta, so that never fixed it. But I like what they tried. And then they also tried with you can't deep strike turn 1 anymore. Didn't fix it. There's so many other ways you can play your armies, or just don't deep strike at all. So that's something that's something. Yeah, I think that's a detriment to the hobby. However, there's one major positive as well to 8th edition that I do think we all need to respect, and it kind of comes to some of the viewer questions today about the codexes and the power creep. GW did clearly respond though to us as hobbyists. One of the biggest things we wanted in 8th edition was as much updates as possible to the hobby. Now, the minor drawback is we're left with all these books everywhere and all these rules everywhere, but we can't argue the fact we asked for regular updates and we're getting it. We actually are. We're getting chapter updates, we're getting big FAQs, we're getting new codexes regularly, so you are actually getting the most up-to-date version of your army you've probably ever played in previous editions. The most up-to-date version. And there's no waiting 2 or 3 years for your codex to be done anymore. They're just getting done. Or they're at least getting wee tweaks to them through chapter approve and big FAQs. So I have to give a massive respect to 8th edition for that, is we're getting that sort of updates.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I mean, 8th edition, I know even by the first turn annihilation, Pierce, because you're really good at using NIDs and having a 35-inch run.
36-inch, but you'll get the measurements
sorry,
correct.
I missed an inch.
It cost you the last game we played, but yes,
Yes, I know.
But yeah, and I think you guys feel free to disagree with me, but I feel that is one of the biggest problems with the hobby is the turn 1 removal of an army. But again, one of the biggest positives is GW are trying to give as many updates as possible. Yes, there's a minor drawback that there's just convoluted rules everywhere, but if you're a one-man army and you focus on, say, only 1,000 Suns, then you're going to be set. You're going to have all your updates you possibly need to try and make your 1,000 Suns match other armies. But that's my thoughts on that. So, you've heard overall, guys. We're gonna kind of start to wrap things up because we have gone over the hour mark. You've heard Stuart's thoughts obviously today on joining the hobby, and I think I'd like to revisit Stuart's thoughts a few months down the line where he's got more ingrained in 40k. Rob's kindly shared about the tournament side of things, and I think there's a good story involved in the tournament side, because I think it's also a sort of mystery a lot of players want to know more about but are afraid to jump into it. Now, Rob's kindly taking me to a tournament, and I won't lie, it scared the living hell out of me, but it's another part of the hobby. And then myself and Ross have gave you our sort of general views of what we think about 8th edition. Now guys, this will be a replay up on YouTube for you all to rewatch, so feel free to post any more questions or comments in there, and as always we will try and get back to you. And we're going to try and keep these podcasts as frequent as we possibly can for you guys, but apologies for the technical issues today. It's our first live podcast, of course something was going to go wrong, but thank you to everyone who's bared with us, stayed online, listened, contributed, and we hope to grow this and give you guys some more content as soon as possible. So closing remarks, anything you guys want to say around the table? Stuart, anything you want to say to the viewers?
I don't like that I can't shoot an HQ choice.
Okay, that's clearly, we need to get you a t-shirt for that.
Yes, I'm just going to keep saying it. I think it needs to be changed. Put it in your next chapter approved so I can change it.
Thanks, Stuart. Ross, yourself?
Just hope everyone enjoyed. If they've got any topics that we wish to discuss to save us time and work so we don't have to think of them ourselves, let us know, and that'll save us some work because we work that way.
We're not lazy, so that's fine. And Rob, yourself, buddy?
Yeah, if people want to know sort of how to get into the tournament scene, what to expect. Everywhere is going to be different, but I think next podcast or a couple down the line, people want to ask questions on what to expect and how to do it, then I can sit down and go through it with them. No problem at all.
I think, Rob, that's a great point for you to end on there as well, is people should try and reach out to those who want to get involved in tournaments but they maybe don't know who to speak to. So yeah, you've got this guy here online that you can ask questions. So thank you, Rob, for sharing that.
No worries at all.
And from myself, well, as your host, I just want to wrap things up by saying thank you for joining us, guys. We've had a lot of topics today we've discussed. We've got many more coming, but we hope to see you all again on one of our usual Tabletop Assault battle reports. And with that, guys, have a great evening and a happy